1, 2, 1, 2.
Hello.
Hey, dude. Hey.
You good? I thought you're still
Can you hear
using
me?
Anchor. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, no, this is StreamYard.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it didn't work on
So,
Safari, so I had to just get my Chrome working.
was this? I'm just toying with this idea. I want us to do like more of these sort of streams. The beauty of this would be just a case of anyone listening, because it's live on YouTube. Anyone listening can message us back, which is kind of quite nice. So we can kind of interact with. This is the first time, so this is almost like a bit of a test one, really, because I want to. There's a few things I want to do, like kind of play with how it looks and things like that. Give me a second. So I'm gonna have to kind of. There's some things I want to do, but I'll actually. Yeah, there's a few things I want to do, but that looks a bit nicer actually. But I like, like I say, I do like StreamYard, but I'm still gonna we'll still do things on Anchor as well. It's just a case of I just want to kind of play with the idea of sort of getting it sort of a bit more interactive. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. That's cool.
Okay. So how you doing, man? Anyway.
I'm good, man. I'm cool.
You've been busy. You've been like super busy.
Yeah, especially with the pup. The pup's this is taking up a lot of time.
Oh my gosh, dude! Being into the old animals, man. God bless your heart.
Yeah, it's been cool though.
The only ones that I'm interested in are the ones that are on the plate. That's it. I'm such a Bond villain. The animal rights people are like, you can't say that. I just did. Oh
cool.
man. Dude, I bet there's loads of the guys on the show that loads of the fans of the show that's kind of missed you on there kind of thing. So that's cool. So what we could kind of do this AEW part on here, and then I'll send you the link and then we can do the Marvel part on Anchor. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's cool.
That's cool. Okay, so talk to me, dude. Okay, so obviously in the world of, this is obviously guys at home, if you're catching this stream afterwards, this is the Lord Be With You podcast show. This is a bit of a kind of initial stream. We're going to do more of them in the future. It's just a case of it's just a way of making the show a bit more interactive with fans and then and with you guys at home that are listeners. If you're catching this stream after the fact, I know a lot of the guys in the States listen to the show, so you might be catching it afterwards. Might be a bit early for some of you guys right now. Hello and welcome, and glad to get you on here. So there's every time I'm going on Twitter, there's always something going on trending about AEW or something going on with AEW. It's always like some superstar from WWE going across to AEW wrestling, and from time to time I'll look on what's going on AEW, and it's at the moment it seems like they've set the world on fire in terms of sports entertainment. So Omar, you're a big wrestling guy like myself.
Yes.
We were going to have, the initial plan was going to be to get Stephen Harper on, because he's also a big wrestling guy who has his own wrestling YouTube channel and things like that. But Stephen's got some stuff going on, so he couldn't quite make this one. But we will get Stephen Harper on again to have a bit of a debate with Omar. But just tell me, just going in now, a brief conversation. What do you think's going on with WWE? There's a lot of stuff going on with WWE releasing a lot of big name talent, and it's like Vince McMahon is completely emptying their locker room, and then half of them are going across to AEW. So what do you make of what's going on at the moment?
I think it's just a bit of a crazy time right now. AEW's just turned 2 now, and they've really shown their mettle, shown that they are kind of an alternative to WWE for the first time in over 20 years since WCW. I mean, there was that kind of time, early 2000s when TNA was started to become something known, but then they kind of emulated WWE to the point that they weren't WWE and kind of fell
Yeah.
back. They're now Impact, but yeah, it's a very entertaining time to be a pro wrestling fan right now.
Man, it's really exciting, isn't it? I mean, I think it's amazing. And you do look at AEW, even the way the design of the ring and how the kind of the setup is with the ramp and the visuals, the wording, the graphics of the show. It does feel like Nitro. It feels like a 90s WCW, WCW at its peak. It gives me those sort of vibes.
Well, that is kind of the idea behind it. Tony Khan, the president of and CEO of AEW, he's a massive wrestling fan for many years, and he did say that before Dynamite launched, which is their main flagship show, that he watched Nitro like all the way through again, and he said that's the kind of feel that he wanted for the show. So it is a direct kind of homage to the old Nitro of WCW in AEW.
I mean, the thing is, like, I remember that, growing up, watching wrestling, and my early experiences of wrestling wasn't actually WWF. It was WCW, and it was guys like it was Sting and Ric Flair, 2 Gold Scorpio, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, all these Ron Simmons coming along. So all these big names, some of these amazing iconic names in wrestling. I mean, I think growing up, for me, if I was kind of really narrowing it down, I'd be going, who was my favorite guys? It would be 2 Gold Scorpio, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and Sting. They were my guys. They were my guys, man. I was all over those guys, and absolutely loved it. And then to the WWF side, obviously it wasn't WWE back then. You were looking at Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hitman Hart for me. They were like, oh man, it was fire. It was absolutely amazing. So that was sort of for me back then. And obviously I think for me back then, it was apparent that even though I was young and experiencing wrestling for the first time, it seemed like a good thing that there was 2 strong companies that were going at it. I think it was good for both companies that they both had a rival that could kind of push them to make their product even greater.
No, I completely agree with that. I mean, for me, I started off with WWF as the first time I watched wrestling. I used to watch it at my aunt's house. Back in the day, I think it was SummerSlam 90. I think it was. I remember that. I remember watching that with Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, and that. But for me, I didn't really care about the heavyweight title scene. I was always a fan of the Intercontinental Championship. So,
oh really?
So at that time, this is before Bret got his push to be world champion. It was when Bret was IC champion. That's what I was more interested in. Hitman will always be my favorite wrestler of all time. But at that time, it was like Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. It was all those kind of guys that got me into wrestling. And then I did watch WCW, and it used to come on a Saturday afternoon. WCW Worldwide. I actually remember my first wrestling show I ever went to was a WCW show with Sting and stuff like that. But
nice.
At that time, it was great to have 2 opposing kind of things, and they pushed each other. I mean, the Attitude Era would never have happened if it wasn't for the NWO.
Of course. I mean, and obviously Attitude Era. Oh my gosh. I mean, obviously, on WCW's side, you've got Kevin Nash, you've got Scott Hall, you've obviously got Goldberg, you've got Diamond Dallas Page,
Yeah.
you've got Booker T, Mr. Spinner Rooney.
Yeah.
You got those. I mean, Ric Flair at that time was at WCW as well.
Yeah.
So you had all those big hitters on that side of things, and obviously Goldberg ended up being the franchise guy.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it was like, okay, and obviously you're not even saying that. You've got Hulk Hogan rocking a black beard.
Yeah. The Hollywood era.
Oh, I tell you
Yeah.
what, man, I know there's issues with Hulk Hogan. We know there's issues with Hulk Hogan, especially with some of the stuff that came out afterwards with racism and things that he said. But, you know, growing up, like Hollywood Hogan, but Hogan, back in the day, Hogan, oh, man.
Yeah.
That guy was fire back in the day. Hollywood Hogan back in the day. He was such a great heel. He really was.
But for me, his in-ring work was not my thing, but his character work was always quite fantastic. So we had that, and then, you know, we had the fall off WCW, and we had the kind of brand split in WWF. Well, then WWE, and I kind of fell out of love with wrestling for a while during that period. I used to watch it through uni. I had a uni roommate who was very much into wrestling. He went to WrestleMania. He actually spent his student loan to go to WrestleMania 20 in New York.
Spending your student loan. Spending your student loan to go to WrestleMania.
Yeah, he did. He spent 3 days in New York to go watch. He was front seat in WrestleMania 20.
That's absolutely brilliant. A big shout out to God's Geeks. He's put a comment on here. WCW era was the best time in wrestling history. After that, I quit watching. Well, God's Geeks, you know, it was a good era. I think you probably get some agreement with us here. It was a fantastic era. Thank you for coming on the stream and leaving a comment as well, dude. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
But for me now, I think this era right now is one of the most interesting eras.
So talk a bit more. So if we got someone like God's Geek listening, playing this on the YouTube now, how can we evangelize to God's Geeks to get him over to like wrestling now? What can we do over? What's so interesting about the era that we've got now?
Well, the thing is that right now, because we are in a kind of an internet era now, we're exposed to a lot more. So back in the day, there were independent kind of promotions out there, but we didn't really have access to them. But now we do. So for me, like my kind of real kind of running, my like current running kind of following wrestling happened because of New Japan and getting into kind of New Japan wrestling. Especially when AJ Styles from TNA, when he moved over to New Japan.
Oh man, AJ Styles, AJ Styles.
But then, you know, he joined the Bullet Club, which is, well, at that time was the Amazing Faction. I mean, if it wasn't for Bullet Club, we wouldn't have AEW, because I mean it kind of born out of that. So, you know, AEW was born after kind of a bet online on Twitter where Dave Meltzer, who's like a massive kind of wrestling kind of reporter, said that no indie promotion could fill a 10,000 person arena outside of WWE. Cody Rhodes, the son of Dusty Rhodes, said, "I'll take you up on that," and him and the Young Bucks promoted their own indie show called All In, which kind of, but out of that came AEW. But what was great about even All In was that it was kind of like a culmination of all the indie performers from different promotions in one show, and that's kind of what the ethos behind what AEW are doing now, where the doors open, where they have their main roster, but then other people from other promotions can just come in, and it just makes it so much more exciting, because not only are people like following other indie promotions now, but
Yeah.
also they're getting the rub from watching AEW, going, "Oh, who is this guy?" and kind of watching what's happening with like kind of the other promotions like that.
Yeah, so that is really interesting that they're so engaging, and it's a very different cultural sort of thing from what was happening with what's happening with WWE. WWE seemed to be a very closed shop, and obviously that's the way that Vince McMahon runs WWE, and
Yeah.
you know. It's quite interesting now, and Omar, I want to get your perspective on this. I remember a promo with Paul Heyman.
Yeah.
And obviously Paul Heyman works for WWE and whatnot, but Paul Heyman's a wrestling guy. He's been with several different promotions and things like
Well,
that.
he owned ECW.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's a wrestling guy, and I remember him doing this promo, and I think when I listened to do this promo against Vince McMahon, I thought, hang on a minute, is he speaking like some truth here, like in the thing? And he spoke about Vince McMahon's father, and that Vince McMahon's father said that he wouldn't run against other promotions in terms of like kind of trying to push them out of business type thing, and that Vince went against that promise. And I just remember this promo, and obviously, I think it was an official promo, but it almost seemed like Paul Heyman was speaking some truth within that sort of within the promo sort of thing. I always wondered about that. Like, was he really like? Was there a lot of honesty in what he was saying to Vince in this promo? I don't know if you ever come across it, but I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, there's an element of truth because it was a gentleman's agreement that before the 80s there was a territories, and
Yeah,
you didn't. The whole thing was you don't poach another man's territory, but
yeah,
basically Vince Jr. he basically bought up all the territories pretty much.
yeah,
So that's how WWF became so prominent,
yeah,
because of that. So there is an element of truth to that.
yeah,
All the southern kind of territories culminated in Jim Crockett Promotions, which eventually
yeah,
became WCW, but pretty
yeah,
much everything else was WWF. So yeah, there is some truth in that. That's there was some ruthlessness. I mean, he did pay off a whole load of guys to to join WWF when they were in the territories. I mean, even Hulk Hogan was in I think it was in AWA before he got big.
Oh wow.
But yeah,
Uh,
that's how it
that's it.
goes.
So obviously going back to Tony Khan. Tony Khan's done a complete paradigm shift, a complete different direction to WWE, and they're engaging with New Japan, and there's
Yeah,
other promotion. I mean, obviously they're engaging with TNA. There's other
yeah,
promotions that they're engaging with as well, and I love what they've done with TNA. I love that storyline. What they've done with Don, is it Callis,
yeah.
and Kenny Omega.
Yeah. It's
Um,
been a fantastic one. I mean, even bringing in the Good Brothers, um,
yeah,
that's been fantastic. Like
yeah,
reenacting some of the old Bullet Club guys together.
that's what I mean. What do you think of Don Callis and what he's done at TNA? Just out of interest.
I think he's done. I think he's done well. I mean, TNA after the kind of Dixie Carter era, was in a lot of trouble. I mean, even with then Jeff Jarrett took over for that very short time after Dixie Carter.
Yeah,
It did lose its prominence, but it's kind of as a product in itself, it's become a solid product between Don Callis and Scott D'Amore.
yeah,
And I think it's been really good that they opened themselves up for to work with AEW. They didn't have to, and they've got a working relationship with New Japan because we've seen Switchblade turn up on Impact, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think working in that kind of similar ethos that Tony Khan is doing has helped them.
yeah, yeah. He was saying. Okay. So we mentioned before AJ Styles now, because obviously this Christian Fandom Geek, we talk about all these different things, but we do look for Christian themes and Christian expressions in whatever we're talking about. And obviously, there's some interesting stories to do with wrestlers who are Christians or who are born again. Sort of from the ones that are a bit public about their faith, sort of thing. And AJ Styles is certainly one of those guys who's an indie guy who's been across the world, New Japan, TNA, New Japan, and obviously he's a big mega WWE star, and he's very very open about being a Christian, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He is.
He's open about his
He
Christian faith.
yeah, it's just like $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. He's actually a minister.
Is he?
Yeah.
I didn't know
And
that. That's interesting.
yeah, and he converted Shawn Michaels.
Oh wow! Because I knew Shawn Michaels was born again, but I didn't know it was
Yeah.
Ted DiBiase that was involved in that. Wow!
Yeah. There are quite a few out there.
And obviously the
But
late
yeah,
great Eddie Guerrero was a Christian as well, wasn't he?
yeah, he was his anniversary of his death yesterday.
Oh man,
10 years.
I love with whenever Sasha Banks is wrestling,
Yeah.
often she does a tribute to Eddie Guerrero because she says that Eddie's one of the main reasons why she's a professional wrestler today.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, last night was the pay-per-view Full Gear with AEW, and
Yeah.
Penta and Ray Phoenix from the Lucha Brothers. They actually did a very loving reference to Eddie Guerrero last night with doing the Three Amigos and the Frog Splash.
You know what? I honestly loved. Even before Eddie died and before that, I loved Eddie Guerrero. I thought the guy,
Yeah.
because obviously, and we're going to talk about it here. At that time, you had Eddie Guerrero, you had Chris Benoit, and there's a few of the other ones as well that came across from WCW to WWE, and they were kind of
Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn. They all came over.
That's right. That's right. So you had those guys come across to WWE, and like, man, they were on fire. Like especially Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. They're the ones that really, from that group, they're the ones that kind of went to the next level. And Eddie was amazing. Eddie's routine that he did with Cheat to Win.
Yeah. Oh man, he was so innovative. I mean, one of the spots that I'll never forget is the whole pretending that he got hit and just fall on the floor just as the referee turns around.
Oh man, brilliant! And I think if I'm right, he got heavyweight champion, didn't he? At least once.
Yes, it was. I think it was actually WrestleMania 20. He actually won the title. Him and Benoit won it on the same night.
Oh wow, brilliant! This is classic. I love it, guys. This is the Lord Be With You podcast show, also known as Christian Fandom Geek on YouTube. Hope you're enjoying yourself. Like I say, I know some of you guys will come on this stream after the stream's ended. That's all good. Continue to enjoy it. Leave a comment if the stream's ended. Just leave a comment on there, and we will. Because I'm planning to get Omar back on again with Stephen Harper. If you leave any questions, I can then we can sort of address some of those in the stream. God's Geek's put a question here. I think he's gone now, actually, to be fair, but he's put a question out. This is a bit of a controversial one, Omar. So, but on this show, we do controversy, but we try to do it with grace, don't we?
Yeah.
Praise the Lord. We try to do it with grace. Now, God's Geek said a bit about this. AEW caught my attention, but a few times I watched there was some, and he's gone about the LGBTQ, and he's put some other letters at the end of that. I don't know what's going to happen up there. So themes on there, and it turned him off. Okay, all right. This is a controversial one. Okay. Obviously, wrestling hasn't really. Obviously, I would imagine there's been gay wrestlers through the years. Of course there would have been. I mean, there's no way there couldn't have been. But I think it's more a case of it just wouldn't have been publicized that they were gay, because it would have probably been seen in a negative light within the wrestling industry of how do you promote a certain sort of character to a demographic, especially if they're coming across as a very macho, intimidating character, and then it might have been behind the scenes they're homosexual. How does that might not translate across well with their character? Do you think that was fair of how things probably were? Omar?
Well, it's quite an interesting one, because I don't know if you follow the Dark Side of the Ring series.
No, I don't. Hang on, was that documentary?
Yeah, it's a documentary series. Everyone.
I've heard of it. I have heard of it. I've heard of it. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, but they recently had one about Chris Kanyon. I don't know if you remember Chris Kanyon.
Oh, hang on. I remember the name. Hang on.
He was a WCW guy. He came over in the Invasion too.
when
era.
when Vince bought them and Shane McMahon and Stephanie took over.
Yeah, but he came over to WWE at the time, but he was a WCW guy. But he actually was a gay wrestler, and he hid it for many years, and that really, really was damaging to his life. Unfortunately, he did end his life.
Wow, sad. That's super sad. That is. That's
In that
super sad.
time.
And I
But
seem to remember, Omar, correct me on this as well. When Chris Jericho was in WCW, wasn't he playing a homosexual character, or have I completely made that up?
I don't actually remember. I wasn't really following WCW back then.
I'm pretty sure
I
they
was more of
alluded to his. Oh,
I
I'm
was,
pretty sure they alluded to his character. I don't know if they had directly said it, but they alluded his character at one point was quite effeminate in
yeah.
WCW, pretty effeminate.
But,
And then when they took him across to WWE, well, I can't remember if it was WWF back then or not. I think it changed over by then. They kind of changed it around a little bit, and it was just kind of a bit of a sort of punk rock sort of, sort of a bit sort of outlandish, but they didn't
with his
really.
gimmick, yeah.
But they didn't really focus on the sexuality side of it. Obviously,
you got the flip side of it though, which he had like Canyon, who was actually gay, and there was trouble because of that. But then you do have you do have gimmicks like Dustin Rhodes had, which was Goldust, where
a straight guy playing
definitely playing up to the kind of non-heteronormative kind of stances at the time.
Of course,
and that was played for, to kind of creep people out and stuff like that. So
playing with the paradigm just to freak people out.
He was. I mean, there was definitely times I remember where he was trying to be quite effeminate to other wrestlers as a way of
I remember that. Totally remember that. And actually, it's really weird, but like as a character, it works, didn't it?
Yeah, but what I mean. So there was open, but it was open as kind of a I think somewhat of a negative thing. But like what you have, with AEW is that it's not played in that way. It's more of an inclusive way, because you have wrestlers like Sonny Kiss, who is played as with a more of an effeminate gimmick, but he's played as a baby face. You have Nyla Rose. You got Nyla Rose, who's the first openly transgendered female wrestler on a major promotion. And then you have someone like Anthony Bowens, who's he wrestles with his tag team, The Acclaimed. He has come out as gay, but with his character, that's not really played up as. So one of the things is, I think what's kind of a positive thing with AEW, because it's a relatively new company. It's built around kind of more modern values, where there's obviously some baggage when it comes to WWE from being running for so long.
And obviously I get people. Look, listen, guys at home, like, I'm not going to tell myself or Omar, we're not going to tell people how to think in that sort of way. For me, it's like each man to his own conviction. Like, certainly, like, we all interpret things differently. Omar, I know you're born again, you're a Christian. I'm born again, I'm a Christian. But I know we all approach things differently in terms of how Christian ethos. And I'm not going to be telling people about their own sexual ethics and things like that. That's between them and God.
Yeah, totally. That's completely how I live my life. But I just think it's good that there is representation. Personally, I just think it's good that there's representation. Just like how as a little black kid watching WCW Worldwide and seeing Ron Simmons power slam Big Van Vader to be the first African American champion. That struck a chord with me to see a black wrestler do that. So I'm sure that there are people in the LGBTQ community that get to see a wrestler that's a bit like them. That's a positive thing for them.
that will represent, that will, because it comes under the banner of everyone needs a hero, doesn't it? It comes under that banner. Whether you like that, whether you subscribe to that or like it, that's okay. If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's fine. No one's going to tell you what to like or not to like.
Well, the thing is, at the end of the day, after 10 minutes, the next that match is over, and then be someone that you do like.
It's true, so true. It's so true, isn't it? That's what I mean. Like, there's always there's all the wrestlers on the card that you like and dislike for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Brilliant, man. Man, it's good. You know what, Omar? We were going to switch to Anchor for the next one. We maybe just continue. We're cooking with gas. Let's just continue on here.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Okay, so guys, we're going from the wrestling part of the show now. We're going to be talking now about Marvel. Omar, look, on the show, you're known as a font of knowledge, cosmic wizardry in lore, canon, and Star Wars. you knew I'd get it in there. You must have known. Okay, man. So obviously we've had Eternals come out recently.
Yeah.
I was really hyped about Eternals, and then I kind of read a lot of reviews, and it's kind of put me off, if I'm being honest. It's kind of, hang on a minute, am I paying a ticket to go watch this? Because it's got portrayed to me as a kind of giant National Geographic version of a Marvel film that doesn't really connect with main continuity. It's a bit of a side concomitant sort of project, and it's kind of put me off. So I went to see Dune instead.
Okay.
By the way, Dune was amazing. If anyone's thinking at home, should I go and see Dune? Go and see it. It's a really good film. Whether you've read the book or not, it's a really good film. Really good film. So what do you think about Marvel at the moment? What's going on with Marvel? It almost comes across like they're really relying on Sony, if I'm being honest. And this has surprised me, because I would have thought it would have been the other way around, because I know Sony was struggling a few years ago. They really were. But it almost seems like Marvel really needs Sony at the moment with the Spider-Man multiverse storyline.
I don't think it's so much that they're relying on Sony. I just think that they're teeing things up. Like, we didn't know that it was the Infinity Saga until we knew it was the Infinity Saga. Yeah. So I think what they're doing now is that there is more kind of through lines happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe than there was through the Infinity Saga, because we have, and I think the era we're in now is just the tee up. We're watching the undercard before the main event.
Wrestling talk. Wrestling jargon.
That's what I think we're looking at right now. I mean, we're looking at, I think we've had a couple of mid-tier films. I haven't seen Eternals yet myself, but I mean, I watched Shang-Chi a couple of days
ago. I'm going to watch that in the next few days. What did you think of that? Just without spoiling it.
I really, really enjoyed it. I think it was a really good film. I think it really is like a kind of a really good showcase of a kind of a different character in a different way, kind of leaning into kind of Chinese mythology and stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's, again, when you see the post-credit scene, you can see that they're teeing something up. You can see in Loki, the TV series, they're teeing something up. Black Widow and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they're teeing something up. You can see that. You can see that we've got a whole thing. We've got the whole Kang thing. So we've got a multiverse thing going on that should culminate in either Far From what's it called now? No Way Home and
Spider-Man.
Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah,
you can see that we can see that's probably going to be the main through line, but yet we also can see that the contest is around. So we're looking at a possible kind of Avengers versus Dark Avengers stroke Thunderbolts type.
Ooh, okay. All right, okay.
I mean, there's
break that down for us, Marv. Omar, I called you Martha. Omar, break that down for us, like what you just said. Thunderbolts, Dark Avengers. Break that down for the guys at home that will be listening, because I know they'll come across this stream and they will listen. Break that down for us.
Well, you got obviously the Avengers. That's the heroes, and then you have kind of a darker version of them. Not necessarily that they're villains, but they go a little bit further than the Avengers would ever go.
Yeah.
Thunderbolts originally is a very interesting story about how they were actually villains that were posing as heroes, but the world loved them so much that they actually started to try be the heroes that they were trying to portray, which
That's
is
an
quite an
interesting
interesting
story.
one. I mean, in the 90s, that's one, like, Thunderbolts issue 1 was one of the most shocking things ever, because at the time the Avengers, Fantastic Four, were all missing on Earth, and a new team, the Thunderbolts, were kind of like marketed as like a new team to kind of carry the banner. But then the final page, you found out that they were all really the masters of evil. So it was absolutely like kind of a mind-blowing concept to know that they were like actually established villains, actually taking on these kind of heroic roles, but trying to do evil things, but then eventually becoming the heroes that everyone thought they were. Later on, the Thunderbolts was seen as kind of like a Black Ops like team of Avengers, kind of almost kind of like a Suicide Squad style type deal. And I think that's kind of where the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going, with like a darker shade of the heroes. Like we've already seen John Walker as US Agent. We've seen Yelena from Black Widow. You see her being connected with the Contessa. So we looks like we've seen a kind of a Dark Avengers or kind of a Thunderbolts team forming in kind of the more grounded side of the MCU. And
now,
then
in terms of the heroes, in terms of the we talk about the motifs, the archetypes. Obviously, I think both of us are big fans of the Boy Scout archetype, and we saw that strong with Captain America. Obviously, it's not the only one, but like it's really strong. Black Falcon's taken over as the Captain America role. Do you think he can live up to it in the same way that they did with Steve Rogers? Because obviously Steve Rogers was a phenomenal, played by Chris Evans, was a phenomenal Captain America. And do you think that because obviously there's a trend towards making everything almost grey and trying to be very sophisticated, not play to sort of the sort of tropes that we sort of got with a lot of the heroes. You think of Richard Donner Superman films in the 80s, for example. You knew who the good guy was, you knew who the villain was, and the good guy was rocking the good guy trope, and they played with it a little bit. Like, I mean, you had that sort of doppelganger Superman, where you had that where Superman went evil, but it wasn't really him. But it was Bizarro, wasn't it? But for the most part, they kept it like you knew that Superman was the good, and you knew that whoever was fighting Superman was the bad guy. Do you think they're coming away from that trope way too much, and they're trying to make everything grey?
I don't think it's too much, but I think the best villains are the ones that if you sat down with them, you would actually say, actually, you've got a point there. You made the way that you're probably going about it is wrong, but there is a point to it. Like, well, as a lifelong X-Men fan, just look at someone like Magneto. He's infinitely more interesting because you're like, actually, you know something. To an extent, you do actually have a point in what you're doing. You just do it in a terrorist type way, like I mean, if you even look at okay, I'm going to go into some dangerous ground now, but just like how you see Thanos is an interesting character more because even more in the MCU rather than his comic book counterpart, because he had kind of an ideology that you can be like, oh, I can see where you're coming from. You're doing it in the wrong way, but I can see where you're coming from. Other than when you see Darkseid in the Snyder cut or the original cut, I don't care, where it's just, I just want the anti-life equation. I got beaten up so bad on the planet that I forgot where I left the anti-life equation. Absolutely stupid. Like, he wasn't a compelling villain. Steppenwolf wasn't a compelling villain. You didn't know anything, the inner logic of why he was doing it. He was just doing it to get back in the good graces of Darkseid.
Yeah, he was like a lapdog, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was like, who cares? But when you looked at how Thanos was portrayed, you could
Yeah.
say that's a gray area, but it was just like, okay, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All the
Yeah.
best villains, if you can see where they're coming from, and there's kind of an element where you can be like, okay, I see, like, no villain thinks they're a villain.
No, it is that
And
old-fashioned notion of everyone's a hero in their own eyes.
yeah, and I think that's
Everyone's
what that
everyone thinks of themselves as the hero.
yeah, and I think that's something that even Marvel early on had trouble with. I mean, that's why I think Loki was such an enduring villain, because there was shades of grey. Like, if you look at someone like Obadiah Stane in the first Iron Man film, he's just a villain. Like, there was no redeeming qualities to him. He was just a
Yeah.
bad guy. Whiplash,
Yeah.
same thing. You know, yeah. Even like kind of someone like Abomination, like they're just villains, and they were forgettable after they finished. I mean, look at Malekith the Dark Elf in Thor 2, The Dark
Yeah.
World. Like, completely forgettable. The ones that you remember are the ones that there's an element that is a shade of grey. It's not just I'm a villain. I mean, even someone like Venom in the comics, he was an out and out villain, but there was kind of like a twisted kind of code that he had that eventually made him kind of an anti-hero. So yeah, so I don't think the kind of hero villain dichotomy works these days, especially post 1985, after what happened in like Watchmen and in Dark Knight Returns. I don't think we can go back to the kind of Richard Donner-esque kind of hero villain kind of trope, really.
But it almost seemed like we wanted Zack Snyder to go there with Man of Steel, because I think with Superman we want that. We want that kind of.
I mean, there are kind of elements that should be a little bit different. Like, but my biggest issue with Man of Steel is that it didn't get what makes Superman Superman. He is like kind of supposed to be the best of us.
Yeah.
He is supposed to be the beacon of hope, where he wasn't in that film. I think when you talk about kind of the gray area, there's some heroes that it can't be that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, especially heroes that are supposed to have a messiah complex sort of thing going on. Yeah. Like, if you've got a hero that's got... Yeah, carry on.
I was going to say, you can have some sort of conflict within them, but you know, like Steve Rogers, at the end of the day, you know that at the end of the day, whatever decision he makes, you know that's the best decision. Just like it should be with Superman. There's other heroes like Spider-Man, where you know that just in the DNA of how that character was created, that he's going to get some things wrong, and that's okay, because he's going to always try and pick up and try and fix what he's got wrong. I think it is down to what characters. Black Panther's another one. Black Panther, he should always be seen as a good guy. There shouldn't be much of a gray area with that kind of character.
Yes,
but then Wolverine, it's that you know that there is a line that he will cross. And I think Marvel really, really started to cook on heat when they started to really, really lean into that. And I don't think there is too much gray area in Marvel. I think there could actually be a bit more, because I think there are still some of the movies where the characters aren't really kind of villains aren't really fleshed out to a point where, you know, there is kind of a true conflict. I mean, I think one of the very, very missed opportunities was Ronan the Accuser. I mean, that character is just bathed in so much pathos. And in the first Guardians, it really was just like he was a religious lunatic, and that was it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially with the Captain Marvel, and you see a little bit more of what the Kree culture is. Only a snippet, but then Ronan the Accuser is kind of a high-ranking person in that society, and we didn't really get that in Guardians.
No, it's almost like a wasted opportunity, wasn't it, in a way?
Yeah. I do believe that, and that's what brings me back to comics every week when I read them. it is to see what, as you say, everyone's hero in their own eyes, and seeing that clash is more interesting than who's more powerful to me.
Yeah. It's that kind of, you're the hero in your own story, and objectively, you might not be that hero. Your choices may be actually hurting a lot of people, or hurting cities or worlds, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. But you've got an agenda, and in your thoughts, you're doing the right thing, but actually, objectively, you're not. And that goes into things like utilitarianism,
Yeah.
And like sort of these philosophy and ethics and things like that of moral choices that we make, and agency, and how far can we go with our own volition.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that we mistake sometimes is that we think that the protagonist is always the hero, and that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you look at the Watchmen, Rorschach is not the hero. He's just the protagonist.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
And he was the embodiment of Randian objectivism. So...
Oh gosh, yeah, go Omar. You can't bring in Ayn Rand without go on, break that down for us, because there'll be guys that would have heard that phrase or heard that wording, but not really know what you're talking about. So quickly break that down for us, for the guys at home.
Well, the kind of Randian thing about about to be selfish is to be good, is that's you're built on kind of your own kind of qualities and your own kind of abilities, and greed is actually a good thing, kind of thing. I mean, if you look at the whole idea of Rorschach, I mean, he's actually a version of the Question, who Steve Ditko, who co-created Spider-Man, also created the Question. He was actually a follower of Ayn Rand. I mean, even if you look at, I mean, there's a whole thing, if you really look at Zack Snyder's work, where there is total Randian kind of qualities in there.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you look at his Superman, it is basically the ultimate kind of Randian kind of character.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but yeah, anyway, yeah, but yeah, so yeah, there are like these different philosophies that are in there. That doesn't necessarily mean they're right or wrong, but just because the main character is the main character doesn't necessarily mean that they are inherently good or evil. And that's just the point I wanted to put across, because there are characters like Punisher, who is, yes, the main character of his comic, but he's not necessarily the hero of his story.
Interesting. That's really interesting to kind of deconstruct, and because I think you're right. Like, I think we do conflate, like you say, the hero being the protagonist, and that's not always the case. And especially, there is a big trend towards anti-hero protagonists, isn't there, nowadays?
Yeah. I mean, post Watchmen, post 1985, that definitely was the case. The kind of after the deconstruction that Alan Moore did, and also Frank Miller in Dark Knight Returns, that's definitely been a trope. I mean, even a character like Cable is kind of a kind of an epitome of an anti-hero.
Very good. Omar, I know in terms of time's run. Yeah. We've run. So we'll call it a day here, guys at home. I hope you've enjoying this on Christian Fandom Geek, and I think I will get it put on the podcast player as well, actually. So that'll be. I don't want anyone to miss out on this awesome conversation. Thank you, Omar, for being on the show again. And a slightly different way of doing it on StreamYard, but we will get you back on again very soon as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Bless your heart. Thanks for being on, dude.
See you in a bit. Bye.